Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. My name is Sergey and I'm the owner of Sergey Green Studio. We provide photography and videography service here in Los Angeles and actually statewide because I just signed the wedding in Arizona. Today's video is brought to you by one of my brides who asked the very beautiful question on how to plan your wedding on the budget. And I started talking about it with her and figure out that I have tons of information to share because I've shot myself personally over 500 weddings or so for the past 15 years. And I also have talked about it with tons of wedding planners, with the different vendors. I was quite heavily involved in lots of wedding planning, and I planned a couple of them myself for my friends. So I put together 10 tips over here. It's actually 11, but 10 sounds better. So I put all of these tips out there and I'm gonna talk through all of them. Watch this video until the end because at the end of it, I'll give you the general idea what you should look for. Anyway, without any further introduction, let's go ahead. First of all, when we're talking about wedding on the budget, I'm meaning in terms of the numbers, I keep in mind that you're trying to feed into like $5,000 to $10,000 range or somewhere there. And primarily it would depend on your guest count, but about it a little bit later. Let's start from the very beginning. First of all, what I want you to understand, the first rule that I want you to get is that you have to know the rules of the market. You have to know your playground. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you have to understand the market. After a little bit of research, you'll quickly realize that you have to avoid Saturdays. Most likely you'll have to avoid Fridays, and you would have to avoid October. Why is that? Because when you're planning your wedding on the budget, you would want to apply certain strategy. You would want to send inquiries to the different vendors, the venues, and ask for the special deals. And if your date's set on Saturday, you have a very slim chance of getting some sort of discount because this Saturday would be busy anyway. And the entire October, and I'm talking about California weddings here. Other states might be different. But here in California, the entire October is completely busy. The good vendors would have like 10, 12 weddings or even more in October. And all of the Saturdays, all of the Fridays would be busy. So you want to avoid that. Second thing you want to think about, of course, that's the venue. How are you going to get the very nice venue for your wedding? Well, as I mentioned previously, what you want to do, you want to set up your wedding somewhere Monday to Thursday. For the simplicity of everything, let's say you pick the Thursday. After you pick the Thursday, you can contact to the different venues and say to them something like, hey, here is my date of the wedding. I know this is what you charge for the regular wedding, but here's how much I have. And some of the venues would accept your offer because for them, there is two options. They either going to have you with, let's say, 50% discount or so. I don't know exact number. You should contact to the venue, of course. Or on the other side, they're not going to have anything. Usually the good wedding planner, the good owner of the venue would pick something rather than nothing. And the same strategy would apply for the rest of the vendors as well. What else can you do for the venue? You can rent Airbnb as well. That's an option, but you have to be cautious on the policy of this specific place. You want to check on the map whether there's neighbors nearby who would complain about you making noises or anything like that. But from my personal experience, and that was kind of a common thing throughout the pandemic, yes, the pandemic was going on during the weddings was going on during the pandemic and people were renting Airbnbs. and neighbors were complaining and everything, but the wedding would still going on no matter what, most likely. But you probably don't want to take care of that too much. So you better pick the place that is not in a residential area where you can still play music pretty loudly and be okay with that. The third option would be your friends, of course. You should just ask around. Maybe some of your friends willing to give to you their house. Maybe they have a very nice backyard. And we usually have this kind of friends who has a nice backyard. So you can arrange some sort of deal with them, or they maybe will let you use this property for free. And of course, it would be all depends on the idea of the wedding. And that's like a off-topic thing, probably the 11th tip, if you will. Make sure that you have a very interesting idea about your wedding, because in this case, everything's gonna go much easier. And it's going to be a huge difference between, let's say, the cheap wedding where you're trying to save money, and the intimate, interesting wedding. With that setup, everything's gonna go much easier. Anyway, after the venue, the third tip is the guest count, and the tip over here is to keep your guest count to the minimum. Let's say 30-40 people or something like that. There is a very common misconception that lots of the money goes into the venue, to the photographers and everything like that, where in reality, pretty significant amount of money goes actually into the meals and serving your guests. So if you have a limited budget and you have like 100, 150 guests or so, you would have to sacrifice on a lot of things. And I'm afraid you would have to transfer your wedding from the category of being like nice, intimate, and interesting to the cheap one. Unfortunately, I would just call things the way they are. But anyway, for the guest count, just keep it close to 40, 50, no more than that. Really, if you're trying to stay in a $5,000 range or so. Next, the tip number 4, and there's kind of like 2 of them. First of all, you want to make sure that you don't have an open bar. And you want to make sure that you mention that in your invitations that your guests would have to purchase their own drinks. Some of my couples went quite an interesting way. They did the break for themselves for the alcohol and things like that, and made sure that all of their guests aware of that. And they just made this look beautiful, I would say. Of course, you don't have to follow the same strategy or anything like that, but they just made alcohol-free wedding, which is pretty good option as well. We don't really have to drink in order to have fun, especially if it's an intimate small wedding. If that's not an option, bar can be still there, but people would have to pay for their own drink. They're not going to spend all of their money on the drinks. And for them, it's much easier to pay for themselves for the drink, rather if you're going to pay for absolutely everything. And the second part of that is simplify your food options, simplify your buffet. There's tons of options. You can go with pastas or the basic Italian food, or you can go with the Thai food or the Mexican, something like that. And this is something that you want to mention in your invitation as well, that your buffet is appetizer based. There is no going to be like the full meal serve, and people should be okay with that. I mean, most of the people are absolutely okay with that. Tip number 5, think about rentals. And you have to really keep that in mind, because all of the additional things like tables and chairs and everything would cost money. Like to rent a nice table for 8-10 people or so would cost you like $150 as for 2022. Over here, you can apply two strategies. First of all, you can choose the venue that already has all of this kind of things, so you don't have to spend anything. You're just paying for the actual venue and all of the things provided by the venue. Second strategy, again, you can contact to the vendors and say like, our wedding on Thursday, and here's the budget that we have for the tables and chairs and maybe vases and stuff like that. It will be great if you can meet us somewhere halfway, and you'll figure out what to send. And just make sure that you're not sending this to 2 or 3 vendors. Send it to 10, 20 vendors. This way, you have much better chances of getting the price that you actually want. And the good thing, like, you're not lowballing or anything like that. You're just really trying to fit your budget, and you actually giving the opportunity to people to make money on Wednesdays and Thursday, as I said, rather than doing nothing pretty much. Number 6. I feel like this kind of be controversial for my brides over here, but let me just share my experience. I shot all different weddings, and I've seen the dresses for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. But I've also seen the dresses, and the brides told me about it, that they bought pre-owned, that they bought somewhere in a thrift store or something like that, and then they tailor it. And this dresses looks absolutely amazing. And I would never really guess until I ask, because the last time when something like that happened, like, I mean, I've seen tons of dresses, and I'm usually like picking the dress up and like, oh, the nice dress, and putting it somewhere, taking photos and everything like that. But there was a wedding in San Diego where I came over there, and I took the dress and like, wow, this is amazing. This is really beautiful, very beautiful material, very beautiful stitching and everything. It's a very beautifully made. And then she told me like, I bought it for $100 in the thrift store, and then I tailor it for me and things like that. So it's not really about the money. You don't have to spend tons of money. There's lots of options out there, and you can always customize this dress a little. I know that David's Bridal has sales as well, so you can check them out as well. David's Bridals, if you want to sponsor this video, please do. But there's tons of places where you can actually get it. And again, you might have a friend who is good in fashion and who's good in this kind of thing, who can guide you through the process. I'm not a professional at the dresses. I'm just sharing the experience that I had with my brides. Tip number 7, music. Of course, it's the awesome idea and it's an awesome strategy to have the DJ. The mood would going to change on the reception. It's always better to have someone who's responsible for the speakers, for the actual music, for the band. They would read the crowd. They will figure out what music to put on to make everybody's happy and things like that. But if you're on the budget, I would highly suggest to just get a very nice set of speakers. You probably can get them from your friends or something like that. Connect it to your Spotify, free of ads, of course. You need to put the very nice playlist. And I think there is an option where you can make a very nice transition from one song to another. And that would be a great option as well. The only thing I would add over here, get a nice microphone. Do not get a cheap things or anything like that. You don't want to have like interference when you're hearing the speeches. Like, get a nice Sennheiser microphone and Amazon. You can return it in 30 days. So get it, put it out there, and make sure that everybody is aware when they go in and doing the speeches. Next tip, number 8, flowers. You don't have to have them. That's really the whole tip. You don't really have to have the bouquet or anything like that. You don't have to have the arch full of flowers on your ceremony side. you can really avoid it. If you still want to have some sort of flowers, you can go to, I know, like the few places in downtown LA where you can get them. You can get them yourself, but again, you can save quite a lot of money by not having them. The only thing I would recommend, do not really get the plastic one. They doesn't really look good, and it's always visible. Like, it's better to have nothing than have the plastic one, my personal opinion. The other option, there is but quite a few vendors that just enter in the market in every point of the year, pretty much. And they want to have this exposure. And if you have like a very interesting idea about your wedding, again, you can email to these vendors who has very little reviews or who just entered the market. You can email them and say like, hey, here's our budget. It would be great if you can provide us certain flowers. Of course, you will have to pay for them, but you don't have to. You would not have to pay as much as you would for the established vendor. So you can get a discount here as well. But as I mentioned before, your theme has to be interesting, and your wedding has to be on Thursday or on one of those days. Number 9, photography. That's us. Again, if you on the budget, the best strategy for you is to just send a bunch of emails to different photographers and explain what is the situation is and what is your budget. Probably you will have you will figure out the custom package with your photographer. Maybe he will willing to shoot everything by himself without the second shooter or anything like that. And again, the more emails you're going to send, the more chances you have to get a response that you want. Of course, it's not going to happen if you're wedding on Saturday. The good photographer is always busy like a year in advance, and there is a very little chance that you're going to get any discount. And if you do get the discount on Saturday, then it's a little bit suspicious, like why is this specific vendor is not busy? But again, it's just my thinking. The other thing that you can do, and what you can do, you can just email that photographers, again, explain the situation that you have the certain budget, and saying like, can I get your contact information of your second shooter? And when you get this information, you want to talk with this second shooter and explain to him the whole deal and make sure that you are okay with them photographing your wedding as the first photographer. You're aware of the risk and stuff like that, but you still want to get a professional photographer who went to the wedding and shot it. So just email to the photographer and ask for their second shooter. Lots of photographers will be happy to send their second shooters as the first photographer. There's a little bit of risk involved in there, but it's just literally just little, and I think you most of the time you will be fine. Of course, you're not going to get the quality of the established photographer, but again, we planning on the budget. What you don't want to do, like 1,000%, what you don't want to do, you don't want to hire your friend or your uncle who never shot the wedding before. Like first 5 weddings or so going straight to the garbage. Like they are not good from the composition point of view, from any point of view, really. And it's absolutely okay. It's the learning process. That's why I never hire the second photographer who is not experienced or anything. They go with us and working as the assistants or as the third photographers until I see that they can shoot the wedding as the second shooters properly. So you definitely don't want to hire anyone who never shot the wedding before. Even if they are good fashion photographers, if they don't know the specific of the weddings, do not risk it. It's not worth it, and you would not be able to fix these photos as well. I cannot say how many times I've got emails with the question was like, oh, we got the raw footage from our photographers and we don't really like the photos, but can we send it to you so you can edit them? That's not going to save the photos. Two options again. Ask for the discount from the established photographer or ask them for their second shooters. And the tip number 10 is volunteers and sponsors. Volunteers, that's someone who would willing to work for you for free labor, basically. Your overly active friends who willing to help you, that's actually me. I'm always happy to help my friends, especially in something that I know, in the topic that I know. So they would help you to organize things. They would help you to send this bunch of emails to different vendors to talk with them, because it's quite a lot of work as well. Maybe to pick up the flowers if you decided to do them. And just in general, to deliver stuff, to load, unload, to move it from the venue, whatever the venue you choose, and things like that. Sponsors. This idea comes from the Asian weddings, and that's actually a beautiful idea, I think, overall. You can ask your older members of the family whether they want to help you or not, but you want to ask in their language. What do I mean by that? Someone who has money and who willing to spend them, they want to see the specific description, and they want to have the number in front of them. So when you put everything together, when you put the entire plan together and you have some sort of invoice or the estimate, you want to send them to your relatives who you know has money to spend, and you want to ask them if they're willing to cover, let's say, your buffet or your photographer or something else. Of course, it has to be asked in a very polite way, and you also want to make sure that they have room to say no, and it's absolutely okay. But some of the people would be happy to help you with, let's say, the food. Let's say the food costs like $2,000 or so, and this people make significantly more than that. And for them to spend $2,000 on the wedding of their loved uncle, it's like nothing. Really, nephew, uncle, whatever it is. So you might have a very high chances of them covering a little bit of your expenses. But again, make sure that they have very comfortable way of saying no to you. So if they're not responding or anything like that, do not remind them about it. And I think that's pretty much it. All I wanted to share with you. There is probably few more tips, but I think if you will follow all of these tips and rules, whatever you want to call them, you have much higher chances to stay under your budget and still have a very beautiful wedding. And again, I want to highlight the importance of the main theme of your wedding to be interesting, original, and beautiful. Because when it is, other vendors with much higher possibility, they would willing to give you the discounts. Your volunteers would be much happier to work on it. So you want to have this interesting, intimate, beautiful wedding or elopement or something like that. And this is all coming from you thinking about details and your organization process, thinking about the color things and details and everything in depth. You just want to think how your wedding will stand out of all of them, how you can make it unique and one of the kind. And when you do that, the rest of the vendors would willing to follow you, and they would care way less about the money or anything like that. Anyway, I hope my tips helped you. and will help you to organize your beautiful wedding on the budget. If you have any questions or maybe you disagree with one of my tips, please let me know in the comments. I will be happy to open this discussion and talk about it. Again, my name is Sergey, and we provide photography and videography service here in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next Thursday.